Today I'm going to be demonstrating my second cigar box amp. This is it's actually a much larger speaker cabinet. The story behind this one, I had worked on this circuit board that came out of a croaking machine. It has a real nice echo in it and a great tone, real loud. I had this all mounted out and ready to go, and an alligator clip slipped under here and shorted it out and blew something on the board. I'm unable to fix it. So to compensate myself, I would really beat myself up over that. The next day I threw this one together out of another croaking machine. It's a much larger circuit board, but it fit in here good. And this cabinet has an 8-inch speaker with a tweeter. So it's probably, I'm going to say it's the loudest amplifier that I've made yet. It doesn't have a real good distortion tone. You can get it to break up a little bit, but if you want fuzz, you throw a fuzz box in front of it, you know. I was able to take advantage of the echo circuit inside of here. So the second part of this first video is going to be me taking a look inside the amplifier. If you'd like to hear what it sounds like, there is a part 2 to this video that has the audio test. So you can go ahead and skip to that if you're not interested in the nuts and bolts or the inside of how this thing works. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at what's inside of this sucker and see exactly what's going on. So taking a look at this thing, I honestly couldn't tell you where I got it from. All I remember was I got it a long time ago and came out of somebody's garbage somewhere. Interesting fact about this speaker cabinet, we did run this on the hull of my paddle boat on the Des Plaines River. That day we had a croaky machine with a guitar hooked up to it and a microphone for my daughter, and then a keyboard was coming through this, you know, with a little drum machine in it, and we were jamming out on the boat. She was playing some harmonica and singing, and I had a little trolling motor on there, a strobe light, a bunch of lights and stuff, and we actually ran into the DuPage County Forest Preserve Police, and he informed me that, quote-unquote, we could not have all this stuff on my boat. I asked him why, and he said, well, people are going to think you're the police. The musical river paddleboat police? Okay, so moving on to the back. On the rear of this unit, you'll notice there's a pot, and that works as a passive high cut. It turns down the tweeter, because there is a tweeter inside of this cabinet. Also, if you see on the bottom, there's this little guy, the ZAM guy. Now I looked into it, and it turns out, I don't know if any of you guys remember EJ Corvettes. It was like a Walmart or a Venture or Kmart, but back in the 70s, they had these EJ Corvette stores. And I looked into it. ZAM was their quote-unquote custom electronics that they sold there. So there's a little cute little ZAM guy. He really ties it together for me with this project. But interesting that Roland actually manufactured some of the ZAM equipment. I don't think they had anything to do with this thing. But so moving along to the inside of the unit, you'll notice that I used some L brackets that I made out of some plumber's tape. I can't get enough of that stuff, but I try to file it down because it's real sharp after you use a tin snips to cut it. But the circuit board came out of, like, pretty sure I got it at Salvation Army. It was like a $5 medium size, pretty low grade croaking machine, and that has the built-in echo on it. So I cut that into this cabinet using those L brackets, and in order to mount the pots, make it a little easier, I mean, I really didn't need all of those anyway, I used CD audio cables. Now that's the cable on the inside of your computer that connects to the CD-ROM drive, carries the audio to the motherboard, so when you play a CD, that's how that, and I've got tons of those cables laying around here, and it finally dawned on me, you know, that it's 2-conductor, you got a red wire, white wire, and then the shielding. And so I'm going to be using those, you know, quite a bit. When I used to play around with this type of thing, I would always remove the pot, which is kind of a hassle. It gets the board real hot. It takes a while. There's a lot of solder on there. Sometimes there are side pins, so you're talking about 5 joints you have to desolder. And I don't have a desolder bulb. I use tape. So it's, in any event, I discovered in this project I had a lot of room to work because the chassis was so big I could just leave them in. And my realization was that you don't have to remove the pot. You can leave them in there. You just turn them all the way down, cut the new one in, or that would be turn them all the way up, I would guess you would say. So there's no resistance. And then it doesn't matter if you leave them in. And, you know, phooey on me for not realizing that ages ago. But, you know, you don't always think of everything. So, looking down there, you can see that the unit has an 8-inch speaker, and I did use this when I recorded my second album. I hooked up a Fender Champ to it because I was missing the back panel to that amp, and I thought I wanted to get a little different sound rather than having the same guitar sound for the whole album. And I remember really liking the guitar tone I got out of this cabinet. So it was just natural for me when I got this crappy karaoke machine to rehouse it in this cabinet and make it something a little more sturdy and a little less embarrassing than plugging into a karaoke machine. And you know, the actual reality of it is those karaoke machine speakers they're tiny. They're little 3-inch, you know, tiny little, basically alarm clock speaker. So inside of this unit there was a transformer, and I just cut that in here. This is unusual for me to have something with a transformer inside, but I had enough room. And you can see there's also enough room I could add a spot to put in some D batteries, and I left those wires on the AC input jack. So if I do want to run this remote and have an internal, you know, battery deal hooked up on here, there's plenty of room for it in there. Also, on the right, you'll see I used an inline 1/4-inch guitar jack. The input jack is like a fancy inline style. I don't know if those are like $6.95 or what, but my little brother Bjorn, thank you again to him. I got a bunch of this stuff from him, some guy that owned a PA company, and including about at least a dozen of those jacks. So they found a great home, and you know, it's nice to have a brother, especially when they garbage pick for you. Now on the side panel, you can see there's a couple of pots. I threw an LED in there and the power switch. I'd like to get a matching set of knobs. Now you can see how I did the cutout here. The reason behind that is the shaft on where you screw the pot in is usually only about a 1/4 inch or a little longer, so it won't make it through the thickness of the wood. So a lot of times I'll cut out a huge panel, huge hole in the unit, and then have a smaller wood panel, and it adds like another hour to the project monkeying around with that. If anybody has a better idea, I mean, I bought some 4-center bits. I guess I could start using those. And anybody has an idea how to get around that, mounting pots without, you know, in wood, I'm sure it's a problem that whoever makes these cigar box amps has run into before. Now the slider pot, there's a pot that moves up and down. That controls the delay time. This has the infamous petey two-finger famous delay mod that I'm always going on and on about. You know, I mean, I didn't make it up, but I use it. That pot came out of an old tape deck that this lady that played keyboard at the church that I played bass for, this lady named Barb Marion. Thank you very much for that tape deck.